The Great Hall of Nexus Station stretched out like a metal canyon. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy sat in carefully arranged circles. Some breathed oxygen like humans. Others needed special tanks or suits to survive in the station's air. The smell was strange, a mix of different atmospheres and alien bodies that made many humans feel sick. Ambassador Kim Dae-hyun walked slowly to his seat. His black suit was simple compared to the bright robes and metal armor of other delegates. He carried only a small tablet and a water bottle. No weapons, no guards walking beside him. The other species had brought soldiers and servants. Humans brought only 3 people. Kim looked around the hall with calm eyes. 10 years of war had brought them all here. 10 years of fighting over planets and trade routes. 10 years of humans trying to find new homes among the stars, only to meet species that wanted to fight instead of talk. The Vorthak delegation sat across from the humans. They were tall, reptile-like beings with thick scales and sharp teeth. Their leader, War Master Thex, wore heavy black armor covered in spikes. His yellow eyes stared at Kim with clear hate. Behind Thex sat 12 other Vorthak warriors, all armed despite the peace talks. To the left sat the Nexari Empire delegates. These beings looked like living crystals that changed color when they spoke. They had called for these peace talks, hoping to stop the fighting. The Nexari made money from trade, and war was bad for business. Their leader, Shardsinger Vel, glowed soft blue as she prepared to speak. The Flothan Collective took up the right side of the hall. They were gas beings who lived in floating bubble suits. Their voices sounded like wind through pipes. They stayed, neutral in most conflicts, but the war was spreading too close to their space. Captain Lee Minji stood near the entrance, wearing a simple gray uniform. She looked like a normal ship captain, not a military officer. Her job was to protect the human delegates, but she carried no visible weapons. The aliens thought this showed human weakness. They were wrong. Dr. Park Sun-woo sat behind Kim, taking notes on his tablet. He studied alien cultures and languages. For months, he had been talking with different species, learning their customs. The aliens thought he was just a curious scientist. They had no idea what he was really doing. The hall grew quiet as Shardsinger Vel began to speak. Her crystal body flashed different colors as she talked. "We gather here today to end a conflict that has cost too many lives," she said. Her voice echoed strangely in the hall. "The Outer Rim worlds have seen enough death. It is time for peace." War Master Thex stood up slowly. His armor made harsh scraping sounds. When he spoke, his voice was like grinding stone. "The Vorthak hegemony has no desire for war," he said. The lie was so obvious that several aliens shifted in their seats. "But we cannot allow weak species to claim worlds they cannot defend. The strong must rule. It is the way of nature." Kim said nothing. He just watched and listened. This made some aliens nervous. They expected humans to argue or show anger. Instead, Kim sat perfectly still, like he was watching a play he had seen many times before. "The humans have taken worlds that do not belong to them," Thex continued. "They spread like a disease, building colonies where they have no right to be. We seek only to restore order." Now Kim stood up. He was much smaller than Thex, and his voice was quiet. But somehow, everyone in the hall could hear him clearly. "We came to these worlds because Earth was dying," Kim said. "We asked permission before we settled. We followed all galactic laws. We paid for the right to build colonies. We have documents proving our legal claims to every world we inhabit." Kim touched his tablet, and holographic images appeared in the air. Legal documents, purchase agreements, and settlement permits floated above the delegates. Every paper was properly signed and approved by galactic authorities. "We did not take anything," Kim continued. "We bought it. We earned it. We built it. With our own hands." Thex's eyes blazed with anger. "Laws made by weak beings for weak beings. The strong do not need papers to claim what they want." "Then you admit you are thieves," Kim said calmly. The word hung in the air like poison. In galactic law, theft was one of the worst crimes. To be called a thief in front of the Galactic Council was a serious insult. Thex roared and stepped forward. His warriors reached for their weapons, but Kim did not move. He did not even blink. "Violence in the Peace Hall violates the Nexus Accords," Kim said. If you draw weapons here, you prove that the Vorthak cannot be trusted in any agreement. Thex stopped. He was angry, but he was not stupid. Breaking the peace rules would make other species refuse to work with the Vorthak. Slowly, he sat back down. We offer fair terms, Kim continued. Pull your forces back to the borders agreed upon in the Treaty of Kepler 7. Pay for the damage you caused to our colonies. Return our prisoners. In exchange, we will share our agricultural, technology, and open our trade routes to Vorthak merchants. Several alien delegates made surprised sounds. The human offer was very generous. Most species demanded much more from defeated enemies, but Thex laughed. It was an ugly sound, like metal being torn apart. You offer us gifts as if we lost this war, he said. But look around you, humans. Your colonies burn. Your people flee before our armies. You have 3 small ships guarding this station. We have a battle fleet waiting just outside this system. Kim nodded slowly. Yes, you have been very successful in attacking farmers and scientists. Very brave of you. The insult was delivered so quietly that it took a moment for everyone to understand it. Thex's face turned darker with rage. Your species will learn to kneel, Thex growled, or you will learn to die. Dr. Park looked up from his tablet. He had been recording everything, but now he watched Thex with new interest. The Vorthak had just threatened genocide in front of the entire Galactic Council. That was useful information. Captain Lee spoke into her communicator so quietly that most aliens could not hear her. Prometheus team, update threat assessment, begin Phase 2 preparations. The Nexari delegation glowed brighter, trying to calm the situation. Please, we must focus on peace. Both sides have suffered losses. Both sides want this war to end. Do they? Kim asked. He looked directly at Thex. Do you want this war to end, War Master? Thex smiled, showing all his sharp teeth. This war ends when humans bow to Vorthak rule. When your colonies become our mining worlds. When your people work in our factories. That is the only peace we will accept. The hall fell silent. Everyone understood now. The Vorthak had not come here to make peace. They had come to demand surrender. Kim stood up and gathered his tablet. Then we have nothing more to discuss today. We will consider your offer and respond tomorrow. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Thex called out one more time. Consider carefully, humans. Our fleets grow stronger each day. Soon, you will have no choice but to accept our terms. Kim stopped at the door and looked back. For just a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Something cold and dangerous that made even the Vorthak warriors step back. Choice, Kim said softly. Yes, choice is very important. Thank you for reminding me of that. As the humans left the hall, the other delegates began talking among themselves. Most felt sorry for the humans. They seemed so calm and reasonable, but they were clearly outmatched. The Vorthak were known as fierce warriors. Humans were just farmers and traders. Only the Flothan delegates seemed worried. In their gas-form culture, they understood that still air often came before the worst storms. Captain Lee walked beside Kim as they returned to their quarters. Should I send the signal? She asked quietly. Kim shook his head. Not yet. Let's see what tomorrow brings. Perhaps they will surprise us. Dr. Park looked up from his tablet. The biological analysis is complete. I have detailed files on Vorthak physiology, psychology, and cultural weaknesses. Just in case. Just in case, Kim agreed. None of them seemed worried about the Vorthak threats. They walked calmly through the station corridors like tourists visiting a museum. Other species saw this as human naivety. They had no idea they were looking at the calm before a hurricane that would reshape the galaxy forever. The second day of talks began worse than the first. War Master Thex arrived with twice as many guards. They wore full battle armor and carried plasma rifles. The Nexari delegation protested, but Thex claimed it was for ceremonial purposes. Kim arrived alone. No guards, no weapons, just his simple tablet and the same calm expression. He sat down across from Thex and waited for the session to begin. We have considered your generous offer, Kim said when the hall grew quiet. His voice carried just a hint of mockery that made Thex's eyes narrow. "We find it insufficient." Thex slammed his armored fist on the table. The sound echoed through the hall like a gunshot. "You are in no position to make demands, human. Our fleets surround your pathetic colonies. Your military is weak. Your people are soft." "Our people are indeed soft," Kim agreed. "We prefer growing food to making weapons. We prefer building schools to training soldiers. We prefer saving lives to taking them." Dr. Park looked up from his research. Over the past day, he had been interviewing alien delegates about their cultures and histories. What he learned disturbed him greatly. The Vorthak concept of negotiation was not what humans understood it to be. In Vorthak culture, talks were just a way to humiliate enemies before destroying them. They believed that offering terms to a weaker species was a form of mercy. They expected gratitude, not negotiation. Park shared this information with Kim through their private communication link. Kim's expression did not change, but he nodded slightly. "We understand that your culture values strength above all else," Kim said to Thex. "But humans have a different understanding of strength." "Yes," Thex laughed. "You think weakness is strength. You think mercy is power. Your delusions will be your doom." The Flothan delegate spoke up, his voice whistling through his suit's speakers. "Perhaps we could find a middle ground. Both species could benefit from cooperation instead of conflict." Thex turned his yellow eyes toward the gas being. "The Flothan should stay out of matters between warriors. Go back to your clouds and your cowardice." The insult was unwise. The Flothan were peaceful, but they had long memories and valuable trade routes. By insulting them, Thex was making enemies he did not need. Captain Lee sat in the observation area, monitoring communications from her fleet. What the aliens saw as 3 small escort ships were actually the tip of a much larger force. Hidden in asteroid fields and behind sensor shadows, dozens of human vessels waited for orders. Lee's communicator buzzed with updates. The Vorthak fleet was indeed large, over 200 warships positioned around the system. But they were spread out, overconfident, and following predictable patrol patterns. They acted like hunters surrounding helpless prey. "Admiral Choi reports ready status," Lee whispered into her comm. "Task Force Vengeance is in position." Kim heard the report through his earpiece, but showed no reaction. He was still focused on giving diplomacy every possible chance to work. "Let us try a different approach," Kim said to the assembled delegates. "What do you want from us, War Master? Specifically?" Thex smiled his predator's smile. "Simple. Humans will abandon the Outer Rim colonies. You will give us control of your agricultural worlds. Your people will work for us, and we will protect you from other threats." "Slavery," said the Nexari delegate, her crystal body flashing red with shock. "You are describing slavery." "We prefer the term protection," Thex replied. "Humans are too weak to protect themselves. We offer them a place in our empire." Kim stood up slowly. He walked to the center of the hall where everyone could see him clearly. When he spoke, his voice carried to every corner of the great chamber. "You want our homes! You want our food! You want our people to work for you without payment! You want us to thank you for the privilege of being conquered!" Kim's voice remained calm, but something in his tone made several aliens shift nervously in their seats. "What we want is irrelevant," Thex said. "We have the power to take what we choose. These talks are a courtesy, nothing more." Dr. Park's tablet chimed with an incoming message. He read it quickly and then passed it to Kim. The ambassador's face went completely still as he read the words on the screen. The message was from Admiral Choi, commander of the human home fleet. Vorthak forces had attacked the human colony on New Jeju. The assault had begun 30 minutes ago, while the peace talks were still ongoing. Kim read the message twice to be sure he understood it correctly. Then he handed the tablet to Captain Lee. Her face went pale as she read the report. "Is there something you would like to share with the Council?" asked Shardsinger Vel, noticing the exchange. Kim looked at Thex with new eyes. "Tell me, War Master, what do you know about the human colony on New Jeju?" Thex's smile grew wider. "I know it produces excellent crops. My people are sampling the harvest even as we speak." The words hit the hall like a physical blow. Several alien delegates gasped in shock. The Nexari delegation began flashing angry red colors. Even the peaceful Flothan made disturbed whistling sounds. "You ordered an attack during active peace negotiations," Kim said. "It was not a question." "I ordered the collection of resources that will soon belong to us anyway," Thex replied. "Why wait for formalities?" Kim activated his tablet and projected new images into the air above the delegates. Live feeds from New Jeju showed Vorthak ships bombing farms and cities. Human civilians ran for shelter while Vorthak soldiers destroyed everything in their path. But the worst image was of a human school. Children no older than 10 years were evacuating the building while Vorthak fighters strafed the area around them. The young faces were filled with terror as explosions shook the ground. "You are bombing schools," Kim said quietly. "Schools with children inside." "Future soldiers," Thex said without any shame. "Better to remove them now before they can fight us later." The hall erupted in shocked voices. Even species that practiced warfare had rules about protecting the young. What Thex described was not war. It was genocide. Kim watched the images for a long moment. He saw a little girl, maybe 6 years old, carrying her baby brother while running from the bombing. The girl looked exactly like his own daughter had at that age, before the cancer took her. Something changed in Kim's face. The diplomatic mask he had worn for 3 days finally slipped away. What the aliens saw underneath made many of them step back in fear. "These negotiations are concluded," Kim said in a voice like winter ice. "You have shown us your true nature, War Master. Now witness ours." Kim touched his communicator with one finger. "Captain Lee, please send the message." Lee activated her own device and spoke clearly into the transmitter. "All Terran Defense Forces, this is Nexus Station Command. Authorization Phoenix 77. The children are crying. Repeat, the children are crying." The simple phrase meant nothing to the alien delegates. But to every human in the galaxy, it was a call to war that had not been heard for generations. It was the signal that had been prepared for this exact moment, when diplomacy failed and someone threatened human children. Kim turned back to Thex one final time. "You wanted to see human strength, War Master. You claimed we were weak because we preferred peace to war. Let me correct that misunderstanding." Kim's voice grew colder with each word. "We do not prefer peace because we are weak. We prefer peace because we are not monsters. But when someone threatens our children, when someone attacks the innocent while pretending to negotiate in good faith, then we remember what we really are." "And what is that?" Thex asked, though his voice had lost some of its confidence. Kim smiled, but it was nothing like the diplomat's smile he had worn before. This smile belonged to humanity's darker past, to the species that had once conquered an entire planet through sheer determination and ruthless efficiency. "We are the species that survived ice ages and plagues. We are the species that turned a world-killing asteroid into a mining operation. We are the species that looked at the empty darkness between stars and decided to make it our home." Kim's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "And we are the species that you have just made very, very angry." The communication channels throughout the station suddenly came alive with activity. Human civilian ships that had been docked for repairs began powering up their engines. Human merchants started sending coded messages to ships throughout the galaxy. Human scientists began accessing databases they had been building for decades. Captain Lee's escort fleet dropped their sensor masking, revealing their true size and firepower. What had appeared to be 3 small diplomatic vessels were actually part of a battle group that had been hidden around the station for weeks. Dr. Park stood up and addressed the alien delegates directly. "For those species that wish to remain neutral, we recommend you evacuate your vessels to at least 50 astronomical units from any Vorthak position. What happens next will not be diplomatic." As the humans prepared to leave the Great Hall, War Master Thex called out one last time, "You think you can threaten the mighty Vorthak hegemony? Our fleet will crush your few ships like insects." Kim stopped at the doorway and looked back. The cold smile was gone, replaced by something far more terrifying. Complete calm. "War Master," Kim said softly, You have made two critical errors. First, you assumed these were all the ships we brought. Second, you assumed we came here to negotiate. Then why did you come? Thex demanded. 6 hours after the peace talks collapsed, the galaxy began to understand what they had really been watching. What seemed like human weakness had been something far more dangerous: human patience. Captain Lee stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching her screens fill with new contacts. The 3 escort ships the aliens had seen were just the visible part of a massive fleet that had been hiding in plain sight. Cargo vessels dropped their false hulls to reveal heavy cruisers. Mining ships powered up military-grade weapons. Even passenger liners began broadcasting military identification codes. All units report ready status, Lee announced to her fleet. Operation Phoenix is now active. Primary targets are Vorthak military installations. Secondary targets are supply lines and communication networks. Remember the rules of engagement. We are not here to massacre. We are here to end this war permanently. The Vorthak War Master Thex had boasted about his 200 warships surrounding the system. What he did not know was that humans had been watching those ships for weeks. Every patrol route, every weak point, every communication frequency had been carefully mapped and recorded. Dr. Park worked frantically at his research station, but he was not studying alien cultures anymore. He was coordinating the largest intelligence operation in galactic history. For years, human merchants and scientists had been quietly observing every major alien civilization. They had learned languages, studied technologies, and cataloged military capabilities. What the aliens thought was human curiosity had actually been human preparation. All xenobiological profiles are complete, Park reported to Kim. We have detailed analysis of Vorthak physiology, psychology, and cultural weak points, transmitting data to all fleet commanders now. Kim stood in the station's command center, no longer wearing his diplomat's suit. He had changed into a simple military uniform, not because he was a soldier, but because the time for diplomacy was over. Around him, human technicians worked at computers that had been disguised as simple communication equipment. Admiral Choi, report status? Kim spoke into his communicator. The reply came from Admiral Choi Kyung-min, commander of Task Force Vengeance. We are in position around New Jeju. Vorthak assault forces are surprised by our arrival. They expected to face farmers and miners. Instead, they found the 3rd battle group waiting for them. Casualties? Kim asked. Minimal on our side. We evacuated all civilians before the Vorthak arrived. Our intelligence network gave us 3 days advance warning of their attack. Choi's voice carried grim satisfaction. The Vorthak bombardment hit empty buildings and decoy installations. Meanwhile, their assault fleet flew directly into our prepared defensive positions. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out, on dozens of worlds. Human colonies that appeared helpless and vulnerable suddenly revealed sophisticated defense networks. Civilians who seemed like easy targets transformed into well-trained militia units. What looked like random human settlements connected into a coordinated military machine. The Vorthak had expected to fight scattered groups of frightened farmers. Instead, they found themselves facing an entire species that had been quietly preparing for this exact war. On Nexus Station, the alien delegates watched their screens in growing horror. The human response was not random or emotional. It was precisely planned and perfectly executed. Every strike hit exactly where it would do the most damage to Vorthak military capability while avoiding civilian targets. Shard Singer Vel, the Nexari mediator, approached Kim carefully. Her crystal body flickered with nervous energy. Ambassador, Kim, perhaps we could restart the negotiations. Surely this conflict can still be resolved peacefully. Kim turned to look at her with tired eyes. The time for peace was 3 days ago. The Vorthak made their choice when they attacked New Jeju during active negotiations. They made their choice when they targeted human children. But this level of military response, Vel protested. Your species seemed so peaceful. How do you have such powerful fleets? How did you prepare for this so quickly? Dr. Park answered for Kim. We have been preparing for this war since the day we first met the Vorthak. We studied their history, their culture, their expansion patterns. Everything they have done follows the same pattern: diplomatic contact, increasing demands, military threats, and finally conquest. You knew they would attack? Vel asked in shock. We hoped they would choose peace, Kim replied. But we planned for war. Humans have learned that hoping for the best while preparing for the worst is the only way to survive in a dangerous universe. The Flothan delegate drifted closer in his bubble suit. Your military capabilities seem far beyond what any species knew. How did you hide such power? Captain Lee smiled grimly. We did not hide our power. We disguised it. Every human merchant ship carries military-grade sensors. Every human colony has underground defense installations. Every human scientist doubles as an intelligence analyst. We have been building this capability for decades, but we designed it to look like civilian infrastructure. Why? The Flothan asked. Because we learned from Earth's history, Kim answered. The strongest military in human history belonged to a nation that no one saw as a threat until it was too late. We applied that lesson to our expansion into space. On the main display screen, the first phase of the human counterattack was reaching its conclusion. Vorthak communication networks went dark as human cyber warfare specialists infiltrated their systems. Military installations found their shields failing as human engineers exploited weaknesses they had discovered months earlier. What terrified the watching aliens most was not the human military capability, it was the human emotional control. There was no rage, no bloodlust, no desire for revenge. The humans fought with the same calm efficiency they had shown in diplomacy. Colonel Han Ji-won led the ground assault on the Vorthak Command Center on Kepler 9. Her forces moved through the enemy base like surgeons, targeting only military personnel and equipment. When they found imprisoned alien civilians, members of species the Vorthak had enslaved, Han's soldiers carefully evacuated them to safety. This is Colonel Han to Fleet Command, she reported. Command Center secured. We have rescued 47 civilian prisoners from 12 different species, requesting medical support for trauma treatment. The alien delegates heard the transmission and looked at each other in confusion. The humans were fighting a war, but they were also conducting rescue operations for people who were not even human. I do not understand, said a delegate from the Kelton Republic. Why do humans care about our people? Why risk their soldiers to save aliens? Kim looked at the delegate with something that might have been pity. Because that is what civilized beings do. We fight to protect the innocent, regardless of their species. We fight to stop cruelty, not to commit it. The words hit the alien delegates like a physical blow. They suddenly realized they were watching something they had never seen before, a military campaign motivated not by conquest or revenge, but by justice. Admiral Choi's voice came through the communicator again. Fleet Command, we have a problem. Vorthak forces on New Jeju are using human prisoners as shields. They have placed captured civilians around their remaining installations. Kim closed his eyes for a moment. Options? We can take the installations without harming the prisoners, but it will require close combat. Casualties will be higher on our side. Do it, Kim said without hesitation. No human is expendable. No innocent is acceptable collateral damage. Understood. Han's special forces are moving in now. The alien delegates watched as human soldiers fought their way through heavily defended positions to rescue their own people. They took losses they could have avoided, suffered casualties they could have prevented, all to save prisoners they could have written off as acceptable losses. Your military doctrine makes no sense, War Master Thex said from his seat in the peace hall. He had remained to watch the battle, though his confident expression was fading rapidly. You sacrifice military advantage to save individual soldiers. You risk your ships to evacuate enemy civilians. You fight like you are trying to lose. Kim turned to face Thex directly. We fight like we remember what we are fighting for. We fight to preserve life, not destroy it. We fight to build a galaxy where children can grow up safely, regardless of what species they belong to. Weakness. Thex spat. No, Kim replied quietly. Strength. It takes no courage to kill the defenseless. It takes no skill to destroy the helpless. Any beast can murder, but it takes real strength to risk your life protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The main display updated with new information. Human forces had secured every major Vorthak military installation in the disputed sectors. The Vorthak battle fleet was either destroyed or fleeing. Most importantly, the attack on New Jeju had been completely reversed, with minimal casualties on either side. But the humans were not finished. Dr. Park activated his intelligence database and began broadcasting detailed files on Vorthak war crimes to every species in the galaxy. Evidence of slavery, genocide, and torture filled communication networks across known space. "We are not just fighting a war," Park announced to the assembled delegates. "We are building a legal case. When this conflict ends, the Vorthak leadership will face trial for crimes against galactic civilization." 2 weeks after the peace talks collapsed, the galaxy watched in stunned silence as humans revealed the true depth of their preparation. What had begun as a defensive response to Vorthak aggression had evolved into something unprecedented: the systematic dismantling of an entire military empire. Admiral Choi Kyung-min stood on the bridge of the battleship Incheon, studying tactical displays that showed the complete collapse of Vorthak resistance in the Outer Rim. His task force Vengeance had not just defeated enemy fleets, they had erased them from existence with surgical precision. "Sir, we have confirmation from all sector commanders," reported his aide. "Vorthak military communications are down galaxy-wide. Their command structure has been completely severed." Choi nodded grimly. "And civilian casualties?" "Minimal, sir. Less than 300 across all engagement zones. Most were Vorthak military personnel who refused surrender orders. The numbers were almost impossible to believe. In just 2 weeks, humans had destroyed the military capability of an empire that had dominated the Outer Rim for decades, while causing fewer civilian deaths than a typical asteroid mining accident. Dr. Park worked from his mobile command center, coordinating the largest psychological warfare campaign in galactic history. But this was not propaganda or lies. Instead, humans were broadcasting truth, detailed documentation of Vorthak crimes against dozens of species. "We have testimonies from survivors of 17 different worlds," Park reported to Kim. "The evidence is overwhelming. Slavery forced, labor, systematic torture, biological experiments on sentient beings. The Vorthak have violated every principle of galactic civilization." Kim watched the evidence files scroll past on his screen. Each document was carefully verified. Each witness statement was independently confirmed. The humans were not just winning a war, they were building an airtight case for justice. "Make sure every species in the galaxy receives these files," Kim ordered. "Let them see what the Vorthak really are. Let them understand why this war was necessary." On the planet Vorthak Prime, the Empire's capital world, citizens watched their sky fill with human ships, but instead of the bombardment they expected, they received something more terrifying: surrender terms that were completely reasonable. Colonel Han Ji-won landed her forces on the capital's outskirts and immediately began setting up refugee camps, not for humans, but for the thousands of alien slaves the Vorthak had been keeping in underground facilities. "Colonel Han to Fleet Command," she reported. "We have rescued over 2,000 civilians from forced labor camps. Species include Nexari, Flothan, Kelton, and at least 6 others I cannot identify, requesting immediate medical and psychological support." The rescue operations horrified the watching galaxy. Evidence mounted that the Vorthak had been enslaving members of every major species for years. Beings who had been reported as missing or killed in accidents had actually been captured and forced to work in Vorthak mining operations. What made the revelations worse was that many species had suspected this was happening, but had been too afraid of Vorthak military power to investigate or intervene. Captain Lee coordinated the orbital blockade around Vorthak Prime with mathematical precision. Every escape route was covered, every communication channel was monitored, but no shots were fired at civilian targets. The humans had complete military control, but they used it with restraint that baffled their enemies. "All Vorthak military vessels, this is Captain Lee Minji of the Terran Defense Force," she broadcast on all frequencies. "You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to galactic conventions. Continue fighting, and you will be destroyed. You have 1 hour to decide." Most Vorthak commanders chose surrender. They had seen what happened to those who fought the humans: complete annihilation with no possibility of victory. The few who continued fighting were eliminated quickly and efficiently. But the most devastating human weapon was not their military technology. It was their understanding of Vorthak psychology and culture. Dr. Park had spent years studying how Vorthak society worked. Their entire civilization was built on the idea that strength came from dominating others. They respected only power and despised weakness. But humans turned this worldview against them. Every human victory was broadcast to Vorthak worlds with detailed explanations of how it was achieved. Humans showed exactly how they had infiltrated Vorthak communications, how they had mapped Vorthak defenses, how they had prepared for every possible Vorthak strategy. The message was clear. The Vorthak had not been defeated by luck or superior numbers. They had been defeated by superior intelligence, planning, and execution. Everything they claimed to value, strength, cunning, military prowess, humans had demonstrated better than they ever could. War Master Thex, now a prisoner on Nexus Station, watched the reports with growing despair. His mighty empire was crumbling not in glorious battle, but in systematic collapse. Every Vorthak strength had been turned into a weakness. Every Vorthak advantage had been neutralized. "This is impossible," he muttered to his guards. "We are the greatest warriors in the galaxy. We have conquered dozens of worlds. How can soft humans defeat us so easily?" The human guard, a young soldier named Corporal Kim Jisoo, answered him honestly. "Because you confused cruelty with strength. You thought making others suffer made you powerful. But real strength is what you do when you have the power to hurt someone and choose not to." "You will break," Thex insisted. "When the cost becomes too high, when your people grow tired of war, you will surrender. Humans do not have the stomach for prolonged conflict." Corporal Kim laughed softly. "You still do not understand. This is not a war for us. This is pest control." The casual dismissal hit Thex harder than any torture could have. To be called a pest, a minor annoyance to be cleaned up, was the ultimate insult to a species that prided itself on being feared across the galaxy. Meanwhile, the broader galactic community was learning uncomfortable truths about themselves. The Nexari Empire had known about Vorthak slave camps, but had chosen to maintain profitable trade relationships instead of intervening. The Flothan Collective had deliberately ignored distress calls from worlds under Vorthak attack because helping would have been dangerous. Only humans had been willing to risk everything to stop the Vorthak. And they had done it not for profit or territory, but because they believed protecting the innocent was more important than protecting themselves. Ambassador Kim addressed the emergency session of the Galactic Council from his position on Nexus Station. The other delegates listened with uncomfortable attention as he presented the evidence of widespread Vorthak crimes. "For decades, you have all known what the Vorthak Empire truly was," Kim said quietly. "You knew they were slavers and murderers. You knew they tortured prisoners and experimented on sentient beings. You knew they planned to expand their empire until every free species was enslaved or extinct." The alien delegates shifted nervously. Kim's words were true, and they knew it. "But you did nothing," Kim continued. "You chose comfort over justice. You chose profit over principle. You chose safety over courage. And because you did nothing, millions suffered in Vorthak camps while you looked the other way." Shard Singer Vel tried to defend her species. "The Nexari Empire could not have fought the Vorthak alone. Their military was too powerful." "You were not alone," Kim replied. "You could have called for help. You could have formed alliances. You could have asked humans to assist you. But instead, you chose to hope the problem would solve itself." "And what would you have done if we had asked for help?" asked the Flothan delegate. Kim's answer was simple and devastating. "Exactly what we are doing now. We would have ended the Vorthak threat permanently and liberated every being they held in bondage. The only difference is that it would have happened years ago and millions of innocents would still be alive." The implications of Kim's words sank into the assembled delegates like acid. Humans had been capable of stopping the Vorthak all along. They had possessed the military power, the intelligence networks, and the strategic planning necessary to end the threat. But they had waited for diplomacy to fail first. "Why?" asked a delegate from the Kelton Republic. "Why did you wait so long? If you could have stopped them?" "Because we hoped you would stop them yourselves," Kim answered. "We hoped that galactic civilization would prove it deserved to survive by standing up to evil when it appeared. We hoped that at least one species would choose to do what was right instead of what was easy." The hall fell silent. Every delegate understood that they had failed a test they had not even known they were taking. "But you failed," Kim continued. "Every single one of you chose to enable the Vorthak through inaction. You proved that given the choice between justice and comfort, you will choose comfort every time. You proved that you cannot be trusted to protect the innocent or defend the weak." "So what happens now?" Vel asked quietly. Kim stood up and gathered his materials. "Now you live with the consequences of your choices. The Vorthak Empire is finished. Their victims are free. And humanity has learned that we cannot depend on anyone else to do what is necessary." As Kim prepared to leave the council chamber, the alien delegates realized they were witnessing the end of an era. 3 months after the peace talks collapsed, Ambassador Kim Dae-hyun returned to Nexus Station. The same great hall where diplomacy had failed now hosted a very different kind of gathering. This time, humans were not asking for anything. They were announcing new realities. The Vorthak Empire no longer existed. Not destroyed in nuclear fire or reduced to radioactive wasteland, but systematically dismantled piece by piece. Every military installation had been captured or destroyed. Every government official was either dead, imprisoned, or in hiding. Every slave camp had been liberated and its victims cared for. Kim wore the same simple black suit he had worn too. The original negotiations, but everything else had changed. The alien delegates who had once looked at him with pity or contempt now watched him with something approaching fear. They had learned what humans were truly capable of when pushed beyond their limits. Dr. Park presented his final report to the assembled galactic community. His words were delivered in the same calm academic tone he had always used, but their implications were staggering. The Terran Xenobiological Survey has completed its comprehensive analysis of galactic civilization, Park announced. "We have detailed files on the military capabilities, cultural weaknesses, economic dependencies, and technological limitations of every known species." He paused to let that information sink in before continuing. "These files have been compiled over 15 years of what you believe to be scientific and cultural exchange. Every human merchant who traded with your worlds was gathering intelligence. Every human scientist who studied in your universities was mapping your capabilities. Every human diplomat who attended your social events was analyzing your decision-making processes." The alien delegates sat in stunned silence. They were beginning to understand that humanity's patient, friendly approach to galactic relations had been the most sophisticated intelligence operation in known history. "This information will remain classified," Park continued, "unless any species chooses to threaten human interests or innocent civilians in the future. Consider it insurance against future conflicts." Captain Lee addressed the military aspects of the new situation. Her tone was professional but carried an undertone that made veteran warriors shift uncomfortably in their seats. "The Terran defense perimeter is now operational," she announced. "Monitoring stations have been established in every major system. Our sensor networks can detect military buildups, fleet movements, and aggressive preparations anywhere in the galaxy within hours." She activated a holographic display that showed the true extent of human military presence. What had appeared to be scattered civilian ships and minor colonies was revealed as a comprehensive defense network spanning hundreds of star systems. "Any species that chooses to follow the Vorthak example will face immediate response," Lee continued. "We will not wait for diplomacy to fail again. We will not allow innocent beings to suffer while bureaucrats debate responses. We will act swiftly, decisively, and without mercy for those who prey upon the helpless." The message was clear. Humanity had lost faith in galactic civilization's ability to police itself. From now on, humans would enforce justice themselves. Ambassador Kim took the podium for his final address to the Galactic Council. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of a species that had fundamentally changed its relationship with the rest of the galaxy. "We came to the stars seeking partnership," Kim began. "We hoped to find civilizations that shared our values of justice, compassion, and protection of the innocent. We wanted to build a galactic community based on cooperation and mutual respect." He paused and looked directly at each alien delegation in turn. "Instead, we found cowards who enabled monsters for profit. We found bureaucrats who valued procedure, overprotection, We found civilizations so concerned with their own comfort that they ignored the suffering of others. The words cut deep, because they were undeniably true. Every species represented in the hall had made choices that prioritized their own interests over justice. The Vorthak Empire enslaved millions of beings while you traded with them, Kim continued. They tortured prisoners while you attended their diplomatic receptions. They planned genocide while you signed economic agreements with them. You knew what they were, and you did nothing. Kim's voice grew colder as he spoke. You failed the most basic test of civilization, the willingness to stand against evil even when it is difficult or dangerous. You proved that galactic civilization is nothing more than organized selfishness with fancy titles. Shardsinger Vel tried to interrupt. Ambassador Kim, surely we can work together to build something better. This crisis has taught us all valuable lessons. Kim looked at her with something that might have been pity. You learned nothing. Even now, you speak of cooperation only because you fear human power. If we were weak, you would still be trading with slavers and ignoring suffering. He was right, and everyone in the hall knew it. So, humanity withdraws its offer of partnership, Kim announced. We will trade with you, communicate with you, and maintain diplomatic relations. But we will never again trust you to do what is right when it matters. Kim activated his tablet and displayed the new galactic order that humans had quietly established during the Vorthak campaign. Former Vorthak territories are now under Terran administration, he said, not as colonies or conquests, but as protectorates. We will govern them until stable democratic governments can be established. Every being enslaved by the Vorthak is now free, and their rights will be protected by human law. The implications were staggering. Humans had not just defeated the Vorthak, they had inherited their territory and population. Overnight, humanity had become one of the largest political entities in the galaxy. This transition will be permanent, Kim continued. Any attempt to reclaim former Vorthak worlds will be considered an act of aggression against innocent civilians under human protection. Dr. Park presented the final piece of humanity's new position. All human colonies and territories are now connected by quantum communication networks. Military response to any threat can be coordinated in real time across the entire human sphere of influence. We are no longer scattered settlements hoping for protection from others, Park explained. We are a unified civilization capable of projecting power anywhere in the galaxy within hours. We have the capability to end any threat to innocent life, regardless of which species poses that threat. The alien delegates finally understood what they were really looking at. Humanity had not just won a war against the Vorthak. They had used that war to reveal and establish their true position in the galaxy. Humans were not weak farmers and merchants. They were the most dangerous species in known space, and they had been concealing that fact for decades while they learned everything they needed to know about potential enemies. Captain Lee delivered the final warning. Any species that chooses to threaten civilians, practice slavery, or commit genocide will face the same fate as the Vorthak Empire. We will not negotiate with monsters. We will not compromise with evil. We will not allow suffering to continue, while politicians debate responses. This is tyranny, protested the delegate from the Malthan Confederacy. You cannot appoint yourselves galactic police. Kim's response was delivered with icy calm. We did not appoint ourselves to anything. You abandoned your responsibilities, and we filled the vacuum you created. If you wanted to police the galaxy yourselves, you should have started with the Vorthak. As the human delegation prepared to leave Nexus Station for the final time, Kim delivered his parting words to the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. You are free to govern yourselves as you see fit, he said. You are free to trade, explore, and build whatever kind of society you choose. But you are no longer free to prey upon the innocent or ignore the suffering of others. We will be watching. We will be listening. And if you choose the path of the Vorthak, you will face the same judgment they received. Kim paused at the doorway and looked back one final time. We offered you partnership as equals. You chose to remain children who needed supervision. Now, you have it. As the humans departed, the alien delegates sat in uncomfortable silence. They had witnessed the birth of a new galactic order, one where humanity served as both protector and judge. The galaxy had peace, But it was peace enforced by a species that had learned not to trust anyone else to maintain it. Trade routes reopened, slavery ended, and conflicts were resolved quickly and decisively. But every species now lived with the knowledge that somewhere in the darkness between stars, humans were watching and waiting. Patient gardeners who preferred to nurture peace, but who would root out threats to it with the same relentless efficiency they showed in everything else. The children of Earth had found their place among the stars not through conquest or domination, but through the simple willingness to do what others would not, stand between predators and their prey, no matter what the cost. And the galaxy would never forget the lesson they had learned when they chose to make humanity angry. Some gardens, after all, require very careful tending.